Living off my son's earnings and you dare to treat me with disrespect. Emily's voice reverberated around the room. I can't bear to speak to you anymore, she shouted, her words slicing through the air. After her tirade, she started to ignore me entirely. As days morphed into weeks, I found myself enduring 4 months of her cold shoulder. To make matters worse, Emily, along with my husband Bruce, did something unthinkable. Oh no, the key doesn't work, I blurted out in shock, only to realize they had changed the locks to our home without my knowledge. Frustrated by their actions, I secretly sold the house and decided it was time to leave. My name is Tiffany, and I'm a 30-year-old. I've been married to Bruce for 3 years. We first met at a friend's party where Bruce's charming demeanor immediately caught my attention. Bruce, 2 years my senior, is a sales representative for a well-established company. His charisma and knack for entertaining made him stand out, and we quickly began dating. As time passed, our connection grew stronger, and after a 1.5 years, Bruce proposed. I can't imagine my life without you, Tiffany. Will you marry me? He asked during a romantic dinner at an upscale restaurant with a stunning view. It was a bit cliché, but I cherished every second of it and eagerly accepted his proposal. We celebrated our wedding surrounded by family and friends. The day was flawless, filled with joy and laughter from many of our colleagues and friends who attended. After a wonderful honeymoon, we started our married life together, juggling our careers and navigating our new life under the same roof. To maintain a sense of balance in our household, Bruce and I divided the chores between us. Having helped his mother, Emily, with housework for many years, Bruce was quite skilled at managing domestic tasks and was an exceptional cook. His homemade meals were always a treat, and we both looked forward to our days off together, treasuring the quality time and the dates we shared. I felt truly lucky to have him as my husband. 3 years into our marriage, our love remained strong, and we enjoyed a generally happy life. However, not everything was perfect, mainly due to issues with Emily. From our first meeting, Emily had been rather cold toward me. She seemed to disapprove of me, primarily because of my educational background. Oh, you graduated from a less prestigious college? I find it hard to trust those who didn't excel academically, she once remarked disparagingly. While my college wasn't Ivy League, I had chosen it for its specialized courses that matched my interests. I've always believed that one's educational pedigree shouldn't define their worth, especially outside of academia. Emily's comments about my education were unexpected and deeply hurtful. This tension was palpable during family gatherings, leaving Bruce visibly uncomfortable. I had my reservations about Emily even before Bruce and I married, but my love for him was stronger than these concerns. Since losing her husband a few years earlier, Emily had been living alone in her in-laws' home and often visited us, usually finding something to criticize. Your cleaning skills are lacking. This sloppiness irritates me, she would say, even if Bruce had just cleaned thoroughly the day before. Not wanting to escalate the tension, I remained silent, apologized, and endured her criticisms. Despite my efforts, Emily's visits continued, each one filled with new reproaches about my education, my household management skills, and more, adding strain to our otherwise happy home. Feeling increasingly strained under Emily's critical eye, I found myself doubting what I contributed to our marriage, especially as her words dug deep during times when I felt most vulnerable. Eventually, I reached my limit and decided to discuss the matter with Bruce. Can we talk about how your mother treats me? It's becoming unbearable, I confided, hoping for his support. She's constantly putting me down, I continued, frustration seeping into my voice. Really? I hadn't noticed, Bruce responded casually, his obliviousness catching me completely off guard. It stunned me that he didn't see his mother's remarks as insulting. This revelation in our 2nd year of marriage left me dumbfounded. Are you serious? You don't think your mom means to be hurtful? I asked, my voice faltering as I began to question my perceptions. Was I overreacting? No, it couldn't just be me. It became painfully clear that both Bruce and Emily were out of touch with how their actions and words affected me. This realization deepened my distress and disappointment in my husband. I had noticed his complex relationship with his mother before, but it hadn't significantly impacted our marriage until now. One evening, Bruce brought up another of his mother's suggestions. "Mom thinks you should cook more nutritious meals. Can we add more variety to our menu?" he asked. "We both have demanding jobs, Bruce. I can't prepare elaborate meals every day," I replied, trying to keep our responsibilities balanced. But Bruce pressed on, influenced by his mother's expectations. "A wife's cooking can inspire her husband to work harder and succeed, so please put more effort into cooking. It feels like you've been cutting corners," he suggested. Reluctantly, I expanded the menu, which made dinner preparations more labor-intensive. However, what truly unsettled me was Emily's reaction when she discovered that Bruce was sharing the household chores. "How dare you make Bruce do housework? A wife should never do that. Stop it right now," Emily exclaimed angrily during one of her visits. Pushed to my limit by her constant criticisms and the imbalance in understanding between Bruce and me, I realized something had to change. We both worked full-time, and maintaining a home should be a shared responsibility. "It's only fair that we share the chores," I explained calmly. "How dare you, my daughter-in-law, speak against me? Unbelievable. This is why I can't stand people without a proper education," Emily retorted. "My argument has nothing to do with education. In fact, I believe my viewpoint is more aligned with modern times," I responded firmly, standing my ground. "Your views, Emily, seem outdated." My words made Emily's face turn red with anger. "That's enough! Stop mocking me! I won't tolerate this!" she exclaimed before storming off to complain to my husband. Shortly after, my husband called me aside. "Mom is really upset. Why are you provoking her?" he questioned, visibly frustrated. "I'm not the one causing trouble here. It's your mom," I tried to explain, but his next words shocked me. "This is all your fault, isn't it, Tiffany?" he accused, shooting me an irritated glance. "What's with the attitude? You've become so disrespectful, just like Mom warned. It's not right for a wife to behave this way," he continued with a disapproving look. "Seriously? Even you're saying this now?" I felt a deep sense of disappointment. I had hoped my husband shared different values, but it seemed Emily's influence was stronger than I had realized. Doubts about my happiness in this marriage began to overwhelm me. Then, my husband dropped another bombshell. "Mom is moving in with us," he announced. "When is she coming?" I asked, caught off guard. "Don't say starting tomorrow like it's temporary," he replied uneasily. "So, it's just for tomorrow?" I questioned, hoping for some clarity but feeling a sinking sensation in my stomach. "No, she's moving in starting tomorrow," he clarified. I was stunned, hardly able to believe what I was hearing. The reality of my situation was beginning to sink in, challenging the foundations of our marriage and my expectations for our life together. "Since when did we decide to live together? My mom finds it inconvenient to keep coming over, so we thought it made sense for her to move in," he explained, seemingly unaware of how stunned I was by the news. "Why would you make that decision without discussing it with me? I'm the one bringing in the income. Shouldn't I have a say in this?" I countered, feeling the imbalance in our partnership growing. It was painfully clear that my husband was deeply influenced by his mother, Emily. She seemed to have convinced him that a wife's role was to be obedient, but deciding unilaterally that she would move in with us was completely unacceptable. The next day, Emily arrived as though it was the most natural thing in the world, bringing large bags with her. She confidently claimed a room on the first floor, acting as if she had always lived with us. "Tiffany, get the coffee brewing, will you? You're such an inconsiderate daughter-in-law," she demanded. "Hey, Mom's tired from moving. Cut her some slack," my husband chimed in, quickly siding with Emily to reprimand me. The thought of this becoming a daily routine was intolerable. I braced myself for any unforeseen challenges. Despite Emily's constant orders, I was deeply involved in an important work project and decided to block out whatever she or my husband were saying. "Why are you coming home so late? It's Tiffany's job to make dinner. Why are you making us wait? Emily complained when I arrived home late one evening. I had to work late. Looks like you both ate already, so what's the issue? I replied calmly, trying to diffuse the situation. My husband and Emily glared at me, their faces red with anger. It's infuriating living off my son's money, and you dare talk back, Emily snapped. The situation was spiraling. I realized then just how strained our home life had become, dominated by outdated expectations and a severe lack of mutual respect. My role and happiness within this marriage were becoming questions too pressing to ignore. I don't even want to talk to you, boomed Emily's voice, full of unwarranted accusations. I was baffled by her assumption that I was financially reliant on my husband. In reality, I earned more than he did. Despite this fact, Emily clung to her mistaken belief, and soon she started to ignore me completely. Whether I greeted her politely or asked her a question, she would simply brush me off. To my dismay, my husband began to mimic her behavior, joining her in this cold, silent treatment. Before I knew it, I had endured 4 months of being completely ignored. During this time, I was deeply involved in a demanding work project, and strangely enough, their silence turned out to be a welcome respite. Who knew being left alone could feel so liberating? They both wore smug smiles, thinking their silent treatment was affecting me, but I saw no harm in letting them believe that. I even put on a subdued, disheartened demeanor to keep up the facade. As the project reached its peak, my workload increased even more. Working tirelessly with my team, we finally brought the project to a successful conclusion. With my intense focus, I had completely forgotten about Emily and my husband. I was so absorbed that their attempt to unsettle me with silence went entirely unnoticed. At some point, Emily and my husband must have realized that their strategy wasn't affecting me at all. That's when they resorted to something utterly unthinkable. My key isn't working. No matter how many times I try, it won't fit the lock, I muttered to myself in frustration. It turned out they had changed the locks without informing me. As I struggled outside trying to get in, I overheard Emily's alarmed voice from inside. Is that a burglar? Their actions had escalated to a new level of absurdity, locking me out of my own home, and now they mistook me for an intruder. The situation had reached a surreal peak, challenging me to reconsider everything about this increasingly strained household dynamic. But we're home alone, so it can't be a break-in, right? Emily's voice carried a mocking tone, dripping with derision. Maybe it's trespassing, my husband added, joining in her laughter. Yeah, maybe we should call the cops, Emily suggested, amusement clear in her voice. Their laughter and casual banter echoed through the house, underscoring their complete disregard for me. This was the final straw. I resolved quietly to sell the house and move on. This house had been my family home, left to me by my parents when they retired to the countryside last year. I held full ownership rights and had taken the precaution of having the house appraised, anticipating I might need to sell it quickly due to Emily's overbearing presence. I relocated to a business hotel and informed my parents of the situation and my decision to sell. Disappointed in my husband and Emily, they gave me their full support. Bolstered by their encouragement, I promptly contacted a real estate agent and put the house on the market. I arranged for a locksmith to change the locks, and when I entered the house again, Emily looked visibly startled. How did you get in? You didn't break the lock, did you? Her voice, laced with indignation, pierced the air, a sound I hoped to never hear again. Ignoring her protests, I began packing my belongings. Say something! I'll call the police for trespassing, she threatened, her voice growing more frantic. Ignoring her threats, I continued with my preparations to leave. Movers swiftly began transporting my larger items as Emily continued shouting accusations, calling me a thief. However, I remained steadfast in my silence. The locksmiths and movers seemed uneasy around Emily, likely sensing the tense atmosphere. I had informed them beforehand that Emily was my husband's mother and was suffering from a severe mental condition, ensuring they understood the complex dynamics at play. As Emily continued to shout, her behavior only highlighted her confused state. She had mistakenly changed the locks, thinking my home was hers. The more she screamed, the more obvious her delusion became. I suppressed any reaction and focused on managing the move efficiently. Soon, all my belongings were packed and loaded. I left pre-filled divorce papers on the kitchen table. Without acknowledging Emily's tirades, I walked out the door. As I departed, Emily's shouts became a distant echo. It felt like a fitting reversal to let her experience the sting of being completely ignored. Later that night, my husband called, his voice seething with anger. "What do you think you're doing, taking things from this house?" he demanded. I decided it was time to confront him directly. "What am I talking about? I've only taken what I bought with my own money, and let's not forget the house itself was passed down to me by my parents," I replied. "You've been so wrapped up in pleasing Emily that you've lost sight of reality?" It seemed my words finally hit home. His phone was on speaker, and I could hear Emily's puzzled interjection in the background. Perfect. Since she was listening, I continued, "Emily, listen carefully. I've already sold the house, so I need you to leave immediately. And please sign the divorce papers. If you refuse, I'll pursue this through the courts." Both fell silent, clearly taken aback by my declaration. "Are you giving me the silent treatment again? That's fine, but know that I will not hesitate to enforce this," I stated, aware that their silence was due to shock rather than disregard. As expected, my husband finally spoke. "Wait, please." But I chose to ignore him and ended the call. Shortly after, I initiated divorce proceedings through my lawyer. My husband promptly agreed to the terms, likely fearing a drawn-out legal battle. As a result, both my ex-husband and Emily were evicted, closing a tumultuous chapter of my life. Although they could have secured a decent apartment with the proceeds from the house sale and their pensions, Emily's irresponsible spending habits had severely drained their financial resources. She had squandered my father-in-law's inheritance to pay off debts, leaving my ex-husband to grapple with the financial mess she created. Despite his numerous explanations and pleas for reconciliation, I chose to completely distance myself from the situation. Now I live alone in a comfortable apartment. I've decided to save the money from the house sale for my retirement. Currently, I am focusing on advancing my career and working towards a promotion. Love can wait. Right now, my priority is securing my future and ensuring my financial stability.